Keeping your business healthy in today's marketplace can be a challenging and overwhelming task. From the threat of litigation inside and outside your organization and the inefficiencies that can rob your bottom line as a result of unproven marketing programs, the deck can be stacked against you. To get ahead of these challenges and stay ahead of your competition, the Bottled Business Sense Show provides practical business solutions that uniquely emphasize key legal principles, management techniques, and marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection principles equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Join your hosts Bill Bernard, Rick Moscoso, and Steve Smith for some high-energy discussion that will inspire you to take control of your business so it can prosper in today's consistently challenging business environment.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Bill Bernard, and I'm one of your three co-hosts for the Bottled Business Sense Show. We air in simulcast every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Our object, of course, as you may already know from listening to us in the past, and for new viewers, our object is to promote and protect the entrepreneur, small business owner, even the large business owner for that matter. And we sat along with a business in a bottle. The business is in the bottle. It's protected, and it's being promoted by way of great marketing tools that my two other co-hosts provide. And it's free information. We try to do this on a weekly basis. So without further ado, before we get into the topic for today's show, let me introduce my two co-hosts, Rick Moscoso and Steve Smith. I'll start with Rick. How you doing, Rick?
Hey, good morning, Bill. I'm doing great. Good to be here again on Tuesday morning. Looking really forward to sharing in the information that we have for our viewers out there. So welcome, and on right there in the middle of the screen, you see in the Aloha shirt is Mr. Steve Smith. Let's welcome him to the show as well.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I was in Hawaii, but I'm not. So I'm here with you guys.
Well, we'll get you there. The more we talk about it, we'll get you there, Steve. We do some shows where we're on the island at times, so we'll have to coordinate that.
Hey, Bill, I've got a deal for you. If you take me over to Kauai, where your house is, my nephew, he and his wife live over there. He's a professional skydiver, and so we could go up in a plane and jump out with him.
Oh, yeah, that'd be wonderful. Oh, that's just what I want to do. Jump out of a plane.
That would cause your ticker to stop altogether.
Yeah, it really would. Would undo all the corrections that I've done here. Well, today's show is about structuring multiple businesses. For a lot of my clients, they wonder how and why and when to structure multiple businesses. By that I mean formal business entities, and I'm talking about corporations or LLCs. I'm not talking about partnerships or sole proprietorships, which I really don't consider to be a business structure. But before we get started on that, one of the principal things that I think we need to recognize is oftentimes this isn't just a matter of protection, it's a matter of prosperity. You oftentimes have to decide what marketing you need, or in other words, what customers you're targeting. That will determine what marketing you need, and that will lead into what I'm going to talk about why you may want to have multiple structures. So as a refresher, I'd just like Steve and Rick to just briefly comment on this whole concept of niche marketing and what you have to do to decide how you're going to market to certain people, and then I'll pick it up with some legal jargon.
Well, the thing that I would like to open with is the fact that very few people, and I don't know that I've ever met one personally, actually start multiple businesses all at the same time. They usually end up having one business, and they do well with it, and so that promotes the idea of opening up something else. Now, that's usually the crux of the problem right there, is what they open up or what they get involved in terms of, is it aligned with the original business? Is it like an offshoot? Does it get them into maybe a similar market where they have an opportunity to share expenses for marketing, but they're kind of going after two different clients? Or did somebody convince them along the way that this other completely different business that has nothing to do with their primary business, this is something they need to get into because there's a lot of money in it.
And for each of those, you're going to have to pick. You're going to have an analysis done of who you're marketing to, right, Steve? Naturally, that goes.
Look, that's the perfect scenario. But most of the time, these guys, they fire first and then they look around to see who they hit. So it's not like there's any. Unless you're into a thing where you're buying another business and you hire somebody to come in and do the due diligence, the analysis, the financial oversight, all of that kind of stuff. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. A lot of times guys just start from the ground up and they build something else because all of a sudden they fall in love with a completely different venue or passion or some other type of product or service.
Well, hopefully, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, and typically that's where I come into play. Is I don't come in as early as Steve would in this, and probably not nearly as early as a customer should when they bring you in, Bill. But I come in with that desire to, okay, how do I promote this? Maybe I ought to do a video and really connect with somebody by doing that and offering some reason or other to, via video to help my marketing. And so a lot of times I'll go back in order for me to understand how to craft a story for them. It hasn't happened often, but every once in a while I'll find somebody who really doesn't know, or doesn't really have a good compelling reason why they're doing this new thing, only because it's, they thought it was cool and they thought there was some money to be made in it, so they're just giving it a go, right?
Well, let's talk about. I'm going to try to cover three brief scenarios today because the show and the time that we have permitting is not going to allow us to get in too much deeper than that. But more specifically, you really need to sit down with a lawyer and a marketing person and say, okay, here's what I want to accomplish before you start putting this pen to paper. But let's say you do want to have develop multiple business structures. One of the questions would be, why would you do that? Let's say you want to create more than one LLC. Well, let's take an extreme. Let's take a real entrepreneur, Steve, somebody who is successful at one kind of business. Let's call it a bookkeeping business. And let's say now they want to get into the restaurant business. Maybe they have an affinity for fine food, and now they want to expand into an entirely different business. It would be perfectly legitimate for them to have an LLC or a corporation for their accounting business, and of course an LLC or a corporation for that restaurant business. And so you've got to be able to understand that this is we're probably talking about a minority of people. Usually people will expand in a similar category. For example, maybe a restaurant will go into a wine store or a wine shop because wines have a lot to do with the food served at the restaurant. And maybe under that scenario, you'd have an LLC or a corporation and you want to just do a DBA for the wine shop. But there's two different scenarios right there. And I would say, Steve, that the thing, and Rick, that they have in common, no matter which one of those two scenarios is prevalent, would be that they're still going to have to understand whether it's accounting going to a restaurant or a restaurant going to a wine shop, they're going to have, are they not, different customer base that they're going to have to learn to market to.
Yes, they will. And what I find happens fairly consistently is somebody will have some type of a brick and mortar business. Maybe it's an auto repair facility. It could be a print shop, it could be a restaurant, it could be any of those number of things where they're either providing services or products, but they're doing it out of a physical location. And what typically happens when people jump into multiple businesses, unless they're into franchising, I know a few people now that have multiple franchises they own, but they're different franchises, but they've made, that's their collection of businesses because that's the kind of business model they know. But if they're not doing that, typically what they do is they try to figure out how they can start another business online and sell things via e-commerce or other ways that don't require them to take on another physical location and all the expense that goes with that. So my question to you, Bill, is most of the time people start with one main business and that produces the need or the desire to go in other directions. If they start out with, say, a business that has an LLC, and they decide to bring on another or start up another or buy another business that's going to end up being a standalone to the initial one they have, is there a right and a wrong way to add on that additional business with a structure? Because they've already started with an LLC. So is there a way to bring those under one umbrella, or are you just left with multiple LLCs because, one's an online service business and the other one's a brick and mortar, repair place?
Well, that's a great question. I can give you two quick scenarios. One, if the branding, and this is where I'll delve, I'll delve into you and Rick's area here a little bit. If the branding is going to be the same, I would say it would be very easy to keep the one business structure, the LLC or the corporation, and then develop a DBA. And especially if it's a DBA online, you're going to want to go and get a fictitious business name registration with the county or city that you live in. Don't think that because you have an LLC or a corporation and then you all of a sudden develop an online presence that is related to that you don't need to register it with your local government. You do. So if the branding is going to generally be the same, where we had the second scenario I talked about, where you got the restaurant and the wine company, it may very well be that you want to do the wine store as a DBA of the restaurant and keep the same LLC or the same S corporation. On the other hand, if you have an LLC and you're a real estate investor, even though your branding is going to be similar, there's going to be asset protection principles that come into play where you're going to probably want to have multiple LLCs because of the nature of the quote-unquote product you're dealing with. Because if somebody hurts themselves or sues you over that property that's in that LLC, you want to keep the exposure limited to the value of that LLC. So if you're a real estate investor and you've got 10 properties, you're probably going to want to have multiple LLCs because each home or piece of real estate that's in that LLC is exposed to a lawsuit. So you've got those scenarios where it may be affected by the nature of the business that you're in versus whether or not it's just a matter of pure branding. So the branding and the nature of the business that you're in overlap, Steve, in a sense. The real estate issue, the brand's basically the same, but you're dealing with high exposure issues, liability issues. In the restaurant wine store, you may be just as easily get away with just doing a DBA.
So let me ask you, Bill, for our viewers out there, is there any advantage in that restaurant wine store scenario to do two LLCs versus the LLC and the DBA?
Well, the advantage would be the asset protection that it would provide. So, yeah, I would say that that's a distinct advantage. If you're going to open up a separate business and you don't want to do a DBA, you're going to want to be doing something a little different than you're doing from the restaurant business, because don't forget, if you're a DBA under that restaurant business, that DBA is protected under the umbrella of the S corporation or the LLC. So it may be that you want a separate company for the wine business because maybe you want to promote investors. Maybe you want to make this a chain in the future and you want to attract investors. And that goes to our third scenario, where you can either develop multiple business structures or develop a holding company, which then has other business structures underneath it, because one of the objectives is to attract other people to invest in the company and thus make this company bigger later on. So that scenario there with the wine store, yeah, you may want to have a separate company because you're going to make a wine store chain in the future, or you may want to have a corporation that has that LLC underneath the corporation umbrella. The principle is the same in both scenarios. You're developing separate entities in some fashion because your goal is a little bit different under those circumstances. Yeah, it's very interesting prospect. But again, when you do this, remember, you're going to have multiple different types of, with the more business entities you have, the different tax issues you're going to have, the different forms and requirements for upkeeping that company and not allowing that company to slip away into an alter ego situation where the company is considered a sham. You're going to have to follow all those scenarios. Whereas when you have a DBA, that's structured underneath the umbrella of another company, an LLC or a corporation, you're only having to do it for that initial business entity. So there's advantages and disadvantages, but they all come into play in terms of how you look at things. And again, I would emphasize, guys, that a lot of this has to do with how you're going to market this business, right? Because depending on what direction you're going to take it in the future, would depend on how you want to talk to your lawyer about these structures. And that's why when we started thinking about this program, we found that this tremendous interconnection between marketing and protecting your business. They really are interrelated in more ways than one.
Well, when you're sitting on an initial business, hopefully it's a stable business. It's one that's producing a profit. It's one that you're getting paid on, and you're entertaining new business opportunities. You've really got the first thing I always tell people to do is look at the new business opportunity for its connectivity to your existing business. Is it just an offshoot? Is it another, your wine store or your restaurant versus wine store? That's a great analogy. You might have a physical restaurant, but you also have a wine store on the other side of the building, and it serves, it might serve people that come eat there. But if you're not interested in eating there, but you just like the selection of wine or the prices, you've got another client to serve. So one of those allows you to do co-branding, co-marketing, which may in fact save you some marketing money, because you're essentially speaking to mostly the same people. Yeah. All right. Now, I've had clients who have done completely different things than that. One guy a couple of years ago had a high-end German auto mechanics business. So he worked on, Mercedes, and he worked on BMWs, and they worked on those high-end cars. But he also had a passion for fundraising for school projects. So he created a whole other business. Now, this was all service-based, okay, where you would go into schools and contract with them to be their fundraising arm so that they could raise money for student supplies or for equipment or, activities and events, things like that. Right. Those were completely different. I mean, there were the sliver of people that overlapped between parents who had kids going to those schools and the parents that also owned cars that he serviced. It was a tiny, tiny sliver. So he was essentially trying to market and divide his activity amongst two disparate businesses. Yeah. Here's the thing I tell people to watch out for. That new business that you're getting ready to open or you're thinking about doing, you've got to take a look at what is going to be the startup cost of getting that business up and running. What's it going to cost? How long is it going to take? Because up until the point where that new business starts to produce revenue and cash back to you, where do you think that money's going to be coming from to start that new venture? It's going to be coming from your existing business.
Initial business, right?
And there's been more than a number of situations where people have kind of let their passion drive them into these new business opportunities, and they're not watching the fort back home that's providing the cash. And so along the way, the existing business starts to falter. Right. And that's one of the attention's not there, and they're drawing the money out of it to try to fund the new operation.
And that's one of the reasons, Rick and Steve, that some people will pick a holding company choice, where they'll have a holding company, the main corporation, and then structure other businesses underneath it, because it's a consistent reminder that those new businesses will only do as good as the holding company does. It'll be a consistent reminder that that holding company is funneling money to the underlying businesses. But here's a great example I want to roll by you guys that touches upon each of what you do, and I think you'll see the connection. There's a guy in the neighborhood here he's a great entrepreneur, owns a tremendous restaurant. Food is exquisite, service is wonderful, great reputation. He has a reputation for making sure that his wine is free. In other words, when you come in, you never pay a corkage fee, because you can bring your own wine, and his philosophy has always been, I want my customers to come in for my service and my food. I don't want them to be hampered for fear of paying a high bill because they have to pay for wine that I sell or for a corkage fee for the wine that they bring in. This guy, and this is where I get my example from, he develops a wine store chain. And now he markets to all of his clients, and he says, these are the great wines you can get at Joe Blow's wine store. Well, guess what? When they come in and they bring their own wine to his restaurant for free, they're bringing wine they bought at his wine store.
Sure.
And he's marketing to the same guy. And how did he do it? He took a series of 3 unbelievable videos, Rick, that tied in the wine store and the wine tasting room that he put inside his restaurant. So now people can buy the wine and go and just wine taste. They don't even have to sit down for dinner.
Yeah, it's perfect. That's a brilliant strategy.
I mean, this is a true story.
Yeah. No, look, there's any number of industries you can look at where people figure out new revenue streams. And I think unless you're looking at getting completely out of the current business you're in because you feel maybe it's kind of stale, you want to try something new, so you're going to hand it over to your management team, let them run it, and you're going to go off and pioneer something new. If you're not going to that kind of a radical direction, most of the time the business ventures that get spawned, they get spawned out of an existing revenue channel opportunity where a current business starts offering something different, something related to what his customers are coming to him for, but it's different than his standard offering. And if that thing takes off and starts getting big enough, it ends up becoming another business.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to your point, Steve, where you said at the beginning of the show where some people will just kind of go off on a tangent and develop any other secondary business, there's another example I know of where a guy is an accountant, and he started dealing with a number of different clientele, and one of his clientele makes sundry products or sells, distributes sundry products. He began to do the business for such a long time, the accounting business for this guy, and understood the relationship between what he was doing and the profit he was making, that he decided to buy into a sundry business, even though he's an accountant. But he was an entrepreneur, and he went about it the right way and funded this new business by way of his accounting business, which was the holding company that he developed. So there's a lot of interesting creative ideas that are out there that for entrepreneurs who are really interested in figuring these things out. But the one common thread is you got to sit down with your attorney, your accountant, and your marketing person, and get the advice you need to be able to go down this road if you're really, really that kind of an individual. So it's a fascinating subject. I love this stuff.
So, Bill, I've got a question for you. This might be outside the scope of this particular topic, but I never stay on topic. Steve mentioned this earlier in the show, and that is, in the case somebody wants to get into a franchise, is there would there be a need for them to look at creating some kind of entity to participate in a franchise, or is that built in, or what do you recommend?
No, it's not built in. When you buy into a franchise, most oftentimes it's a company buying into another company's franchise. What you have to be able to distinguish in the buy-sell agreement, and what you want to be able to make sure you understand, is the liability aspect of it. In other words, is this franchisor going to control your business to the extent where anything that happens may fall on his ticket? In other words, if there's any lawsuit, is he going to be responsible? A lot of that has to do with the control that's maintained by the franchisor over the franchisee versus a scenario where the franchisee just buys into it like a sub shop, Subway, and then owns his own business and can market it any way he or she wants. Either way, you may have some backup insurance issues that you can rely upon, some indemnification you can rely upon by the franchisor if he or she has a lot of control. But either way, I would suggest that you go into it with your own business entity. Yeah, you as a franchisee, develop your own business entity and protect yourself. Make sure you're covered.
Yeah, and Bill, just a little clarity on that thing. If you buy into a franchise that's well branded and has generated some marketplace name recognition, certainly Subway, they're actually the #1 worldwide franchise today.
Yes, I don't doubt that.
They do more business. They have more outlets around the globe than anybody else. But those guys, I mean, there's a lot of oversight from the corporation to make sure the franchisee, who, by the way, that's their independent business, but they're still tethered to that corporation to make sure that everything's done exactly the way, Subway or anybody else's, franchise rules are governed.
Right.
If you buy the rights to market a product, and there's really no other oversight other than you're just getting the rights to do it, you're kind of falling into licensing at that point.
Right.
And you can accumulate licenses for different product lines and things like that. And past you just going out and marketing them through your own streams or under your own maybe general distribution label or something, there's really not a lot of other controls that you would find in more of a traditional franchise.
Right. There was a case not too long ago where a minor hotel, a small hotel, bought into a larger hotel chain or got a franchise from this larger hotel chain, and the larger hotel chain put in its logos in the smaller hotel for marketing purposes, indicated in the buy-sell agreement that it would have the right to come in and review the franchisee's books whenever it wanted to. When you have that kind of control, then you really are subject to the whims of the franchisor. But by the same token, anybody who sues you can go for the big pockets and try to get the franchisor to pay. Not to say that the franchisor might not come back for some indemnification at some point, but it's there nevertheless. So yeah, it's a very interesting prospect. But I think Steve, it all comes back to, before you do this, you better know what your goals are and who your clientele is going to be and whether you can sufficiently market to them, because no matter how many of these businesses you have and how well protected you are, it's not going to help you if your business isn't prosperous. And that's where this whole marketing issue comes in for these new businesses.
Well, I would just say to any business owner who wants to own multiple types of businesses, whether they're closely aligned or they're completely disparate, you always got to sit back and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the reason I would want to further fragment my time, my focus, my resources on driving something else, especially if it doesn't seem like it's in alignment with what I'm currently doing or where I feel my own expertise is. Sometimes, there are some people that just, they feel an affinity to personal retailing because they like being in front of the customer. They like that service aspect, but along with that comes long hours, so there's a plus and minus for this kind of stuff. And I think sometimes people, in an effort to go after something that they perceive as a real high value opportunity, and oh my gosh, if I get into this, I can make millions. They don't step back and say, what is it going to be required to actually make this work, and how much am I going to be giving up from my other assets to invest so that this thing has a chance of getting off the ground? Sometimes you get so fragmented that nothing works because you're spread too thin.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to end the show on this note. Use that guy or gal, Steve, that you just described versus the person who says, you know what, I'm a pretty successful entrepreneur. I am really interested in this other kind of business. I'm going to go in, I'm going to sit down with my accountant. I'm going to get the books of this proposed business that I want to purchase. I'm going to have that person go over the books. I'm going to find out exactly what the profit and loss statements look like. I'm going to find out what kind of money I need to invest in this. I'm going to check with my marketing guy to see how much it's going to cost me to market to a specific clientele each year. And then I'm going to decide if I have the time, if all those ducks are in a row, I'm going to decide if I have the time to do this in addition to my other business, and whether I need to hire any extra employees, and can I afford those people.
And the one person you would go to for something like that would probably be a merger and acquisition specialist, an M&A specialist, or a business broker, because they have the resources to be able to answer all those questions, do that valuation, and kind of give you the skinny on, all right, here's what you're looking at. And then once you know, then you can make the decision as to whether you want to go forward or not.
Right, but far different from the first person you described who just on a whim says, I'm going to open up a new business, right?
Right.
Well, guys, thanks today for your contributions on this. I think it was a very interesting subject. I have clients ask me about multiple business opportunities all the time, and unless they can give me a sound reason why they want to do this, or if they have investigated it, especially with guys like you and Rick, Steve, my expertise doesn't come into play. I can develop multiple businesses for people all day long, but the success of it depends on whether or not you have the resources and the wherewithal to market and make these businesses prosper. So, having said that, we'll ready to close the show and look forward to seeing everybody back here next Tuesday with another great episode of the Bottle Business Sense Show. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Just Bill, I mean, because you're the lone legal expert on the show, why don't you tell everybody, number one, how they can find the show if they want to leave a comment or listen to some of the other archive shows that we've built up, and two, how do they contact you if they've got, if they're at the verge of looking at another business and they want to chat about what that's involved legally?
Yes, thank you, Steve. Well, Bottle Business Sense Show, www.bottlebusinesssenseshow.com. You can go to that website directly and watch all of our shows, past and present, and you'll see it in simulcast. Or you can go to www.blogtalkradio.com/Bottle Business Sense Show, and you will be able to listen to our radio program in audio only. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook, as well as on LinkedIn, I believe, and just by putting in Bottle Business Sense Show. And as far as my practice, WFBLegalConsulting.com is the website, and the phone numbers are 949 area code 413-6535 and 698-6222.
All right, Rick, any closing thoughts?
No, but one of the things I did want to share to our viewers is that we're here every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and quite frequently we get asked questions in regards to the topic that we're talking about. Feel free to connect with any of us down below this video. Our contact information is there. You can reach out to us at any time if you'd like to send some information in to us, a question, or even be a future guest on the show. You can connect with us at bottledbusinesssenseshow@gmail.com, or drop us a private message on social media, Facebook, Google+, at Bottle Business Sense Show, or even on Twitter at BB Sense Show. So you can connect with us on many different platforms. We look forward to hearing from you and connecting with you again next week here at 10 a.m. Pacific time here on the Bottle Business Sense Show. So, Bill, thank you very much again for sharing the information today. I always learn a lot about business structure from you. It makes it, every time I hear it, it just gets more and more clear in my head on because you have an uncanny way to take the complex and make it simple.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, sir. Okay,
guys.
So we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a prosperous week, everybody.
All right, take care.
All right.